Right. Okay. So when I think about masks, this is what I'm asking students to pay attention to. Um, I'm thinking about the difference between the idea that somehow, Christology is something that is a fixed representation. That Christology is about, um, an accurate portrait of who Jesus is. Masks to me suggest that um, the term accurate here does not do an adequate job of getting at the different expressions, the different ways in which Jesus has been constructed uh, over time, in terms of different cultural
Right,
understandings.
right. And a mask is something you can take off, right?
A mask
And
is something,
put on a
right,
different one of some
right,
sort, right?
right,
So if you imagine Christology, Christologies in notions of masks, part of what you're saying is one, there's multiple. Two, there's not an essential Christology of sorts, right? So what's the relationship then between we've the Christian tradition has a long history of creeds,
right,
right? These seem to be getting at some sort of, in my mind, some sort of narrowing or sort of fixing. This is who Christ is. How does that relate to the popular Christologies that you're asking students to sort of to share with each other along
right,
the way?
right. So one of the things I want students to be able to do is to identify from their experiences, their different contexts and places, the different ways in which the figure of Jesus Christ is imagined, constructed, um, represented, and portrayed. Um, in relation to the classical Christologies, the Christologies of the creeds, um, I would like this, students to be able to identify fragments, pieces, bits of folk understandings of Jesus, to imagine that in relation to some aspect of the creeds, to say, this aspect corresponds or in some way matches with um, that aspect in the creed, right? I'm not looking for a one-to-one correspondence on every point.
Sure.
Um, um, the importance of folk Christologies is that they challenge us to rethink
Yeah.
The meaning and relevance of Jesus Christ in our time and place.
Right. Right. And so, in a way, this sort of exercise, this Masks of Jesus exercise, which, by the way, maybe I'll ask you why Mask of Jesus and not Masks of Christ. Interesting. But in a way, you're asking students to sort of look at how folk Christologies might be reading creeds, or at least bits of creeds, and then how creeds are read are reread through these folk Christologies,
Right.
right? So it's sort of an infinite poesis, right? Rather than we've got some original Christology that then gets sort of presented in a way, but
right.
how they're informing each other.
Right.
And so you'll be reading along the way both things, some of the high Christology stuff and exploring some.
Exactly. It's about bringing folk Christologies, folk meaning people, how ordinary people read the creeds, how they interpret them. It's about bringing that into conversation with the classical Christologies of, the creeds. And I'm particularly interested in how these folk Christologies are rereadings and challenges of of the classical material.
Yeah.
Um,
So the discontinuities as much as the continuities.
there are discontinuities there in that the folk Christologies tend to appropriate the figure of Jesus Christ in the images and the materials, the representations available to us today, um, um, which were not available to the people who wrote the creeds. So there's some discontinuity there. But the continuities are in how we, each and every one of us, positively or negatively, try to find some meaning, culturally or historically, in who Jesus is today. Um, Negatively, we might say, he was not the Son of God. He was just a good guy who did good deeds. walked around, was a kind of virtuoso, or we might say on the positive side, um, in the direction of high or classical Christology. Oh gosh, this was the Son of God who was crucified on the cross, died, and was raised from the dead. But the important thing is to be attentive to how we are situated in relation to the classical material.
Right. And so why is that? Why you chose masks over faces, or what's the relationship? Because there's a lot of publications out these days about the faces of Jesus in
Right.
certain sort of.
Right.
So why masks and not faces?
Well, masks, because I'm interested in the fact that the interpretation we give to the idea of Jesus or Jesus Christ change over time. These interpretations to me represent appearances. They are forms of masks, right? And I come from a culture, Michael, where ritually we distinguish between faces and masks, and in ritual terms, a mask sometimes stands for a face, but it is not the face. So in terms of Christology, what we say about Jesus Christ can represent who Jesus is, but is not always about who Jesus is. People from other places might decide to and will interpret Jesus Christ, in their own cultural image, if you like, in their own cultural mask.
Yes.
So it's the difference between appearance and reality. And what I'm trying to say is that reality is not fixed. Reality always appears to us in the form of a mask.
Yes.